The long-term environmental impact of pesticide use is a topic of growing concern, as the widespread application of chemical agents in agriculture has consequences that extend far beyond the fields where crops are grown. While pesticides serve an important role in controlling pests and protecting yields, their persistence in the environment and unintended effects on non-target organisms create complex ecological problems. Over time, these issues can compromise soil fertility, contaminate water sources, threaten pollinators, and disrupt broader ecosystem balance, with implications for both biodiversity and human health. One of the most immediate environmental consequences of pesticide use is soil degradation. Pesticides, particularly herbicides and insecticides, can alter the natural microbial communities in soil that are essential for nutrient cycling and plant growth. These microorganisms, including bacteria and fungi, play a critical role in decomposing organic matter, fixing nitrogen, and maintaining soil structure. Repeated pesticide application can reduce microbial diversity and abundance, leading to soil that is less fertile, less resilient to erosion, and more dependent on chemical fertilizers. Over decades, this creates a cycle where more chemicals are needed to maintain crop productivity, further intensifying environmental stress. Water contamination is another serious consequence of long-term pesticide use. Runoff from agricultural fields, particularly during heavy rainfall or irrigation, carries pesticides into rivers, streams, and groundwater. Many commonly used chemicals are water-soluble or persist in sediment, allowing them to travel long distances and accumulate in aquatic ecosystems. Fish, amphibians, and other aquatic organisms are highly sensitive to these compounds, and chronic exposure can lead to developmental abnormalities, reproductive failure, and population declines. Beyond ecological effects, pesticide-contaminated water can reach human communities, posing risks for drinking water quality, recreational exposure, and bioaccumulation in food chains. Pollinators, including bees, butterflies, and other insects, are particularly vulnerable to pesticide exposure, with consequences that ripple throughout ecosystems. Neonicotinoids and other systemic insecticides, which are absorbed by plants and present in nectar and pollen, have been shown to impair navigation, reduce reproductive success, and increase mortality in bees. Declines in pollinator populations threaten the reproduction of flowering plants and the productivity of crops that rely on insect pollination. Over time, reduced pollination can diminish biodiversity, alter plant community composition, and affect the stability of food webs. Given the critical role of pollinators in both natural and agricultural ecosystems, the decline of these species represents a significant ecological and economic risk. Long-term pesticide use also contributes to broader ecosystem imbalances. Non-target species, from soil invertebrates to birds and mammals, can be harmed by direct exposure or through secondary effects of food chain contamination. Predatory insects, birds, and beneficial soil organisms may decline, reducing natural pest control and increasing the reliance on additional chemical applications. The loss of biodiversity can destabilize ecosystems, making them less resilient to disease outbreaks, invasive species, and climate-related stresses. In some regions, pesticide residues have even been linked to declines in amphibian populations and local extinction of sensitive species, highlighting the cascading impact of chemical use. Resistance development is another ecological concern. Pests exposed repeatedly to pesticides can develop resistance over time, prompting farmers to increase dosages, rotate chemicals more frequently, or introduce more potent compounds. This cycle not only raises costs but also amplifies the environmental burden, as more potent chemicals are often more persistent, more toxic to non-target species, and more likely to accumulate in soil and water. The long-term effect is a self-reinforcing loop in which chemical dependency grows, ecological damage intensifies, and sustainable farming becomes increasingly difficult. Agricultural runoff and environmental contamination are also compounded by the cumulative nature of exposure. Multiple pesticides, applied in combination or over successive growing seasons, can interact synergistically in soil, water, and living organisms, producing effects that are difficult to predict and monitor. This complexity challenges regulators and scientists, making it harder to set safe limits, anticipate ecological tipping points, and mitigate damage once it occurs. Communities and ecosystems may experience subtle but persistent chemical stress that is not immediately visible, yet over years or decades, the consequences accumulate in ways that are difficult to reverse. The human dimension of these environmental impacts should not be overlooked. Reduced soil fertility may require increased reliance on synthetic fertilizers, which carry their own ecological footprint. Pollinator declines threaten food security for crops like fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Water contamination can expose downstream populations to chemicals linked to endocrine disruption, neurological effects, and reproductive issues. In this way, the environmental impact of pesticides is intertwined with human health, livelihoods, and long-term food system stability. Mitigating these effects requires a combination of strategies, including reducing reliance on chemical inputs, adopting integrated pest management, improving runoff controls, and supporting biodiversity-friendly farming practices. However, the warning remains clear. The long-term consequences of pesticide overuse are profound and far-reaching. Soil health, water quality, pollinators, and ecosystem resilience all suffer when chemical application is not carefully managed. Unlike acute toxicity events, these impacts accumulate quietly, often becoming evident only after decades of sustained use, highlighting the urgent need for awareness, regulation, and proactive stewardship of agricultural landscapes. In conclusion, while pesticides provide short-term benefits in crop protection, their long-term environmental costs are significant. Persistent residues, runoff, ecological disruption, and biodiversity loss underscore the importance of cautious, well-informed use. Without sustained attention to sustainable practices and monitoring, the very systems that support food production and ecological balance may be undermined, creating risks that extend far beyond the immediate farm environment.